Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to be continuing with our causes of the American Revolution. We talked about the French and Indian War on our last social studies session. Today we're going to be talking about the Quartering Act, and we just need to quickly go back to the French and Indian War to help us understand where the Quartering Act came from. So during the French and Indian War, the British and the French were fighting for different territories, and the British won. And so when the British won, what the British government decided was, since the British had won the Ohio River Valley area, as well as that land between the Mississippi River and the colonies, all the colonists kept moving to the west. And so the Native Americans were unhappy about this. So the British, across the pond, across the ocean, had created a law in the Proclamation of 1763, telling colonists that they could not settle west of the colonies and that was Native American land. So when that happened, because of the French and Indian War, there were so many British troops and armies there. The British had decided to keep a lot of the soldiers in North America rather than return to Great Britain. And so when that had happened, they needed places for the British soldiers to stay. Great Britain wanted to protect the colonies, and it wanted to protect them from the Native Americans. But on some level, Great Britain also wanted to keep the colonies under control. So this is what brings us to the Quartering Act. And the Quartering Act, that name comes from quartering or quarter. And that quartering or quarter means staying somewhere, having a place to stay. So it has to do with the soldiers and the troops having a place to stay. So I'm going to start by reading right here, Great Britain. Great Britain wanted the colonists to help pay for the protection provided by its troops. In 1765, the British Parliament was their Congress or their lawmaking body, passed a new law called the Quartering Act. It ordered the colonists to provide quarters or places to live for British troops. Colonists also had to give the soldiers food, fuel, and transportation. So imagine that you had somebody come live in your home, not by choice. They were just told that they were living there, and you had to feed them and give them a place, a way to get places. And so that's what's happening to the colonists. The Quartering Act angered the colonists. They did not want to pay for British troops in the colonies. Therefore, many colonists treated the soldiers badly. After fighting the French and Indian War, Great Britain needed money to pay its debts. It also had to pay for the army in the colonies. In 1765, to raise money, Parliament passed a new tax law called the Stamp Act. So we're going to go over the Quartering Act and the Stamp Act today. So we're going to also talk about the Stamp Act. The Stamp Act. So we have the Quartering Act, which is telling colonists that soldiers are going to come live with them. They need to feed them. They need to give them transportation. So basically, the colonists have to pay for the soldiers to stay there. And so the British were the ones who wanted the soldiers staying there. Now, the Stamp Act is a little different. The Stamp Act was another law, but it said that the colonists had to pay a tax on printed papers. Newspapers, pamphlets, marriage licenses, and playing cards were taxed. When a colonist paid the tax, an official would mark the printed paper with a large stamp. This new tax angered the colonists. They did not want to pay more money for things that they used every day. They did not want to pay another tax to the British government, but they were mostly angry because they had no say in making the law. Colonists showed their anger in many ways. Some colonists refused the stamps. Some of them protested in the streets and the town squares, and some tried to scare off the tax collectors. At times, groups of colonists even attacked the tax collectors and their homes. Groups from different colonies joined together in protest against the Stamp Act. In colonies, merchants agreed not to buy any British goods. Many women, such as the Daughters of Liberty in Rhode Island, refused to buy British cloth. They wove their own cloth instead. And we're going to be learning a little bit later about what the Daughters of Liberty were. In October 1765, 9 colonies sent delegates to a special gathering in New York. So that's people to represent them. This meeting became known as the Stamp Act Congress. The delegates thought that all the British subjects had a right to vote on taxes through representatives, but the colonies had no representatives in Parliament back in Great Britain. The delegates said that it was unfair for Parliament to pass tax laws like the Stamp Act. To them, such laws were an example of taxation without representation. Remember, we talked about taxation without representation. So you're taxing people and you're creating these laws without them being part of that vote. It's just telling people that they have to do it. It's not a very democratic way of doing things. The colonists' angry protests surprised King George III in Parliament. However, British leaders knew that they could not force the colonists to obey the Stamp Act. In March 1766, Parliament repealed the law, but Parliament let the colonies know that it still believed its right to tax them. So that's a bit about the Stamp Act. So basically, the government in Great Britain needed to make money, right? Because now they had these troops that they were paying for. They had to pay back this war. So what they started doing is they're like in Europe, in Great Britain, they're saying, well, we did this all for them. We sent people over to protect them, to take care of them. And now we have all this money that we have to pay back, but it was really doing it for them. So they should pay back. So the Parliament and the king believed that they should be contributing, but the colonists did not want to be contributing and paying all these taxes. So as we could tell in both the Quartering Act, as well as, which is the soldiers came to live with them, as the Stamp Act, the colonists started to be getting angry because they did not want to be charged these taxes. And so these are the next two acts we're going to do. Today, what your assignment is, you're going to also have a couple of videos to watch, but you are given this Google Slides right here, and we're going to reuse this in other assignments, so we might have to adjust this assignment. What you're going to do is you're going to fill in the Quartering Act and the Stamp Act, and if you can, fill in the proclamation in the French and Indian War. So French-Indian War, Proclamation of 1763, the Quartering Act and the Stamp Act. You're going to write the year that it happened, because as you can see here, it's a timeline. So it's going to go, these are the earliest. So this was the earliest event, then comes this, then comes this, then comes this, and so on and so forth. So we're going to do the French and Indian War, Proclamation of 1763, Quartering Act, and Stamp Act today. And then in our later lessons, we're going to do these other events. Okay? All right, guys, that's part of your assignment today. The rest is posted in Google Classroom. Catch you later.